I keep getting rewarded for that quick change that I made. Whereas before I was trying to get the quick reward for something that I wasn't changing.
And sometimes the only thing that can allow a person to be ready to do that is that the pain where they're at has to be so much greater than the discomfort or the pain that they have to willingly inflict upon themselves initially until they adapt to it to be able to overcome.
I used to be stuck in the middle stage where it's like really not that bad, and but it's also not that good. So you're not really going to make a change because you're just kind of in the middle. And like your life could be a 10 out of 10, which would be like, wow. But your life could also be like a 1 out of 10. But most people are like a 6 kind of, or like a 7. And that's where I was, is like I'm like a 6, 7. So like I'm pretty cool. Like things are all right. Nothing's crazy. And it did take it starting to go from a 6, 7 down to like a 5, 4, 3, 2 for me to actually make a change.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, I am very excited to be chatting to Lauren Knight Hughes. Hi, Lauren. Thank you so much for accepting my invite. I'm so excited for you to share your story with my audience because I feel like we have a very similar background when it comes to addictive or eating disordered history and how the carnivore diet kind of plays into that. So, if you can tell everybody just a little bit about that background, and then we can start.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be on here, Sarah. So thank you. It's taken some time for us to finally get this coordinated. So I'm glad it worked out. Um, yeah, so I have always had just a very extreme personality. It's kind of one of my superpowers, I think, where I like tend to go all in on things and I can focus really well and I can get build projects and do whatever. I'm a sales director, so I've always really been driven by like winning and like the dopamine that comes with that, you know? Um, that translates to the rest of my life too. So I was never like somebody who was an alcoholic, like alcoholic, what you would see the standard would be for that. But I definitely like would drink on Fridays and Saturdays when I was growing up, and not growing up, but like, teens, honestly, and like 20s post college. And when I would drink too much a lot of the time later on. So it wasn't that I was drinking every day, I didn't need to, but when I drank, I would keep drinking. So alcoholism runs in my family. I saw it happen with my mom. She actually passed away from alcoholism. So I just saw very clearly like how the path would go. My uncle was an alcoholic too, like so many people. So I ended up stopping drinking, and then later on, I discovered carnivore, and I discovered, I'd had issues with also like food, basically eating disorders up until I discovered carnivore, and it kind of just went like that for like anything. It was like breads and all this stuff, and so I really struggled with food because to me, I didn't know that meat was okay to eat because the language was always that meat is going to cause cancer and meat is bad and salads are good and stuff like that. So yeah, so I discovered carnivore and then it totally changed my relationship to food. And it has given me the opportunity to really create a new life for myself because I'm no longer controlled by the sugar addiction that, so many I think are more than we think are controlled by that. If not everybody, honestly.
That's what I think. Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
because you just look around and the way you can determine if somebody has an addiction to sugar or carbs or those kinds of foods, just ask them to stop because everybody's life would be better. And they all know it, that if they just stopped eating those foods, and nobody can do it, even if they look healthy, even if they're lean, even if they're making tons and tons of money, even if they have a fantastic like relationship or social network and whatever, there's always more and they know that they can be better, and deep down they might want it, but there's a hesitation, there's almost like a little bit of a fear when they think about stopping that. Why do they feel this way? Because they know deep down the craving, the detox, the withdrawals are going to come, and that is a defining feature of addiction. You don't get withdrawals from broccoli, you don't get cravings for broccoli. So I agree with that. I think it's everybody.
yeah, I think it is. And look, I think that there's also like some truth in the gray space. Like I think that there's a lot of people out there who are fine. You know what I mean? Like they're good. They actually are excelling. And I will just use alcohol as an example because I think it's a good parallel. If I'm to say like alcohol kind of parallels well with like processed foods. Um, there's a lot of people out there who are not like me and they can have a good, healthy relationship with alcohol because to them, they don't have that dopamine rush that kicks in when they start drinking and then they need to keep going and going and going. Like I'm that way. But there's a lot of people also who, let's say, can have kind of like a relationship with ultra processed foods or even like plants for that matter, like things that tend to be more carbs and more sugar and they can kind of be like moderate about it and moderate. I'm just not one of those people. And so I think like if there's people that are like kind of like me, it's a nice realization to know that that's okay. Like there are just some people out there who shouldn't drink. That's okay. There are just some people out there who shouldn't eat, what the rest of society eats. That's okay. So it's not to say that I think like people are bad if they are eating sugar or plants or fruit or whatever. I think that's fine. But it's kind of like a matter of knowing oneself, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Of course, there's no moral obligation to any of this, right? Whether you have the thing is
Yeah.
with a drug, to develop end stage addiction, there is sometimes some genetic underlying factor. There's also how many times have you repeated that? It could be the environment that kind of pushed you to repeat that behavior if you were placed in a very stressful environment growing up, for example, and you realize you could use a drug and not have to deal with the situation. But yeah, like there is no moral obligation to anybody to be sober or not. It's not
Right.
a good or bad thing. Um, and um, and with any addictive substances, like for example, there was a time where I started taking the nicotine pills, and very
Oh,
quickly realized, yeah, you very quickly realize, oh wow, okay, like you start to escalate. And at first it feels great, but then you realize you're just taking it to not feel the withdrawals. But the moment I decided to stop, it was so easy for me. Now it is a drug. I got addicted to it, but I quit easy. With the food, it took longer. With the food, it was a whole other beast. And I think, anybody listening to this, and if anybody's interested in the notion of sugar addiction, food addiction, they know that that's probably one of the hardest ones to kick. Thankfully, on the carnivore diet, I think it makes it so much easier because you don't have to keep, like, I look at other programs, for example, and they allow so much more nuance, and there's just so many questions you still have to answer every time you want to eat. Is this a sober food? Is this an addictive food? Is hummus good? Is it a little too processed, or should I have the chickpeas, So I feel like with carnivore, and understanding how we can thrive on that, it makes it so much easier to be sober. I feel like this marriage of like, right, the eating disorder, addiction history, and the carnivore, it makes it so much easier for us to kind of just find peace or food freedom. And I feel like you came across that. How did that happen? How did you realize the addictive thing? Like, did you come into it knowing that you want to use a carnivore diet for the eating disorder, or for other reasons, and then you realize it gave you the food freedom?
yeah, no, it's the latter. So I actually didn't go into carnivore for any other reason besides just wanting to try it out. Like my best friend, he was using carnivore, and this was like 4 years ago. This was like when Ken Berry had under like 100,000 subscribers or something like that. So it was like a long time ago. And my friend had tinnitus, and so he used carnivore to help rid himself of tinnitus, which is the ringing in the ears. And so he and I are very close. So we just kind of did everything together and like kind of just both think alike. And so I was like, okay, just give it a shot for like 30 days while you're doing it. And for me, I was already very restrictive because my entire life I had an eating disorder. So like on the out front, I looked like it wasn't like I spoke about it, it was like privately, I was like very selective with my foods and counting calories and all that. So I tried it because I was like, whatever, I'm already pretty selective. And I ended up having like the most amazing month ever. Like I ate more food than I'd ever eaten in my entire life. And I trail run. So I was doing like 6 to 14 miles running. I lived in Colorado at the time on these mountains. And
You lived
um,
where?
in Colorado.
Colorado. Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, so I had access to all these trails. And in that month, like I basically came out of it and was blown away with how good I felt. I lost 10 pounds, which it wasn't like I needed to lose 10 pounds, but like my body composition changed a little bit. It was like I leaned out, you know? Um, and I needed less sleep. I I had the biggest thing for me was that I realized what I thought I knew about food was wrong because I was always, since I was 11 years old, restricting until that 30-day period. And then in that 30 days, I not only ate more food than I could possibly imagine, and it was with the help of my friend. He was like, keep eating, like, you gotta eat. Like, habitually, I wanted to cut and not eat that much. He was like, no, you gotta eat until you're full. And it was just life changing. So what then came from that was I realized like my whole paradigm around food shifted. I started to look at all this food out there that my friends could eat. Like bagels is like a great example. My friends could like eat bagels and cream cheese and like be full after having a bagel and cream cheese for breakfast. And for me, it's like that just makes me hungrier. Like I just want to eat like 2 3 bagels, which is feels like really bad when everybody else eats that and then they're full. For me, it's just like it just kicks in my leptin, I think, and I just want to keep going. And it gave me perspective on like, oh, that's not real food. That might be why.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
and it's very interesting you mentioned that because yeah, like and I think also it goes through phases. So I do remember times where I would be fine with small amounts of those kinds of foods, and then other times when I would be going through a more hard or difficult period of my life where all of a sudden the eating would be out of control and it would be used I would be using it in a addictive or like a drug, using it as a drug.
right.
And but the thing is, once you cross that line to where you've used it as a drug, especially if you've done it a few times, you create those neural pathways in the brain. And so whenever it is at its extreme, you always want to remember that those neural pathways, they never really go away. Kind of like if you've learned a
Yeah,
language, right? And you've never practiced it. Like I've learned French growing up, but I don't really talk French to anybody here in the United States. But the moment I listen to somebody or I have to talk, it just comes out as if I never stopped talking or practicing. The neural pathways are still there. Even though they're dormant, they're not being used. The moment I need it, it comes back and it comes back fast. It's the same
mhm,
thing with that addictive pattern. And so the moment you might go back into a stressful environment, if you've had that addictive type behavior and you let your guard down and you don't realize this is a real addiction and you have to protect that sobriety, it's very easy to open the floodgates back up again if you come from that history. So,
totally.
yeah.
Totally agree. I mean, I've even had to realize something that was really fascinating for me to realize was once I cut out, I went really extreme with it for a while. I did carnivore and I still do carnivore, but like if I have if I have like 10 grams of carbs a day, like I'm fine with that. Um, it's fine for me. But what I realized, I'm trying to think of how to put this best, was like it was my relationship to food that was really giving me a dopamine hit and was a neural pathway, to your point, that was constantly repeating that I had to relearn. So, like, for example, I grew up eating very little, but then I would get some calories from little sugar hits. So I would have like, I would cut down on food and then I'd have like candy, like a little candy. So my calories would still be really low and I'd be net negative at the end of the day. But I would get these little bumps of like kind of like bumps, honestly, of like sugar because I would have like a candy or like a little thing here and there. And so I realized even doing carnivore, I used to struggle. I'd fall off the bandwagon every like 2 weeks. And it would be like, I would just, for some reason, I'd be really intense on carnivore or like pretty consistent. And then every 2 weeks, I'd like binge on sugar. And it was like, well, why? And I cut out, I didn't drink. I'm from Colorado. I used to smoke weed, don't smoke.
Yeah.
I literally don't take in any substances other than coffee. And carnivore. And I was like, I'm still having these patterns. And
Mm.
I realized that I had a habit, like a neural pathway of every 2 weeks, I would go and basically cut corners and just have like a little couple nibbles of candy or like something sugary. And then it would go, and
Yeah.
then I'd fall down that rabbit hole. And
Yeah.
it was like, programmed into me. So once I took everything away and I'm like sober and I realized it's like, wow, I'm like eating this candy and it's like on my couch. I'm like, why am I doing this? And I realized like, oh, it's me. It's just, there's nothing causing me to do this other than my patterns.
Yeah.
It's me.
Yeah.
Like I have to change my relationship to food. That was
Yeah.
interesting for me.
Yeah, it's like that first bite. It's like the alcoholic, right, who stopped drinking and then had a tiny sip of a drink. It's very
Yeah.
difficult to turn that off once you start activating that part of the brain, right? It's so actually what happens, the addictive loop is in the basal ganglia. It's like deep in the brain, in the primal part of the brain, like one of the most ancient parts of the brain. And it's a very powerful part. And so what ends up happening the moment you even think about potentially using your drug, whether you're thinking about it in a drug or not, whatever, it doesn't matter. Like if you're thinking even about using sugar or candy, the brain understands there's a promise of reward. There's a promise that maybe I'm gonna allow myself to get that dopamine hit. Maybe I can have a little bit of sugar. Even before you consume it, your brain lights up. Specifically, there's a part in the brain called the nucleus accumbens. That's the big player in addiction. It's tiny, right? And it lights up and it releases all of this dopamine. And all this dopamine, what does dopamine do? It's the motivation molecule. The more
Mhm.
dopamine you have, the more motivated you are. And the more dopamine you're releasing, it's like you're a guided missile. You forget about everything else except the motivation to acquire whatever it is you're driven to get.
Mhm.
So all this dopamine being released in the nucleus accumbens, what happens with all of this dopamine, and by the way, the amygdala, the stress part of the brain lights up, releases the adrenaline. High levels of dopamine and high levels of noradrenaline literally shut off your prefrontal cortex, where you have discipline, where you have logical thinking, where you have the real you, like the mental clarity. And so I know it's happened to me so many times, and any person with any drug addiction and any person who's ever fallen off the wagon on their diet, whether they realize it's an addiction or not, like they tell me like, I don't know what happened. I started and I don't know what happened. It's like you have this mental fog. And the physiology behind it is that very high dopamine, very high adrenaline that's being released literally opens up channels in your prefrontal cortex, in the brain cells in the prefrontal cortex, channels that allow the electricity to kind of like escape, because you know how you need an electrical potential for the neurons to fire. It opens up channels in the prefrontal cortex brain cells or neurons, and this electricity literally escapes. And so it goes dead. And so now you don't
Your
have
frontal lobe?
your frontal lobe goes dead, the prefrontal cortex, all the
Wow.
parts where you have to, yeah, it's amazing.
It's like a lobotomy. It's like a
It
real-time
is.
lobotomy.
It is. Exactly. That's why you feel this brain fog. It's like I can't think clearly through what's happening. I can't stop once you start. That's what's happening.
Mhm.
And so you lose the ability to regulate your actions. Now, does that mean you have no control? That's not true. Of course you can. There are lots of people who go through, like, you can look at the Navy SEALs or any person that's striving to do something very difficult. When you go through something very difficult, it's similar to when you're in that addictive loop. You're releasing lots of stress, and even dopamine is getting released. So you still have that same kind of disempowerment of the prefrontal cortex, but you can override it with practice. But it's a lot more difficult than stopping any other habit midway.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so fascinating. What you talk about, and this is actually why I wanted to bring you onto my platform. So we'll have to figure out when to do that because this is the crux, I think, of so much of it. And like,
I hope you're enjoying this podcast. This is a reminder that you only have a very few days in order to sign up for the group coaching. If you want to make sure you don't miss any sessions, we start a new cohort every month, and I answer all your questions. I lead all of the group coaching sessions. We talk about cravings, binge eating. We talk about carnivore dieting. If you're doing carnivore, you don't have to be carnivore in order to join the group coaching. We talk about reverse dieting, gut health. Basically, any questions you have, I will be there. And we all support one another. The current schedule for July 2025 is every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern and every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern. I hope to see you there. And now back to the podcast.
What you just described is a lot of what makes up my personality. And this is fascinating. Like, I'm a sales director. And the way you become a sales director is you get really good at sales, like basically. And the way you get good at sales is like you're constantly like chasing the win. A lot of competitive athletes, former pro athletes, go into sales because they're competitive, they're going after the dopamine potential is there.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's quite powerful because when used correctly, can create a really wonderful life and can be really powerful. But when not used correctly, when not harnessed, it can be the downfall. So it's not that like any of this is inherently bad. That's the thing that I think is fascinating. It's just understanding it and then making it work for your agenda, in a sense. It's
I
kind of
love
how
that.
yeah.
Exactly. I used to sign all my newsletters when I first started a few months ago with addiction is untapped potential.
Yeah.
Um, and it's so true because I feel that people who tend to have some form of substance use disorder, it's because we're trying to get that dopamine because we already have like that low baseline dopamine, low number of dopamine receptors or D2 receptors in our brain. And so it's very easy to get it from substances. But
Mm-hmm.
if we really want to be sober long term, I truly, truly believe that you gotta have that big goal, that something like competitive, that something really exciting that can match the level of dopamine hits and stimulation and excitement you get from using the drug, or really what from thinking about using the drug. That's where you get the most excitement.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't have that, and this is what I always tell my clients, it's like to overcome a really gnarly food addiction or binge eating or eating disorder behavior, it's not enough to just be like, I just want to get sober and still have like this average life and like go to my 9 to 5 or plan my retirement. It's like, that's just not going to cut it. That level of just the mediocrity of life for an addict's brain is just not going to cut it. You already know too much. You already know there's more stimulation available in this universe.
Mm-hmm.
You're no longer naive to that. You're going to have to be able to match and exceed that so that the drug loses its value. And it's hard to get that to people because they have tons of limiting beliefs, right? And so it takes work to destroy limiting beliefs because they don't think they can do a lot of things because the drug paralyzed them all of their lives. It's easier when you're younger for sure, but it can always be done. And the harder it is for you to change that and to transform your life, your story will be far more inspiring, right? And the ability to actually get it done. Like what if you could pull off a miracle? That's what I always kind of tell people, especially people who feel like it's just too late, like this is too hard. Um, yeah, but it's all mindset.
It is all mindset. Yeah. What's fascinating for me too is like for pretty much everything I've ever done, um, when it comes to substances, I've learned that there is a switch that you can flip and it can just change, like immediately. It now, does that mean that it didn't come with months and years of screwing up or whatever to get me to that point? Usually it does. Like I have to, when I stopped drinking, I was 26. I stopped drinking before it became like an actual problem. But I knew internally, like, why am I blacking out? Like, this happened one too many times. Or why do I feel so hungover the next day? And this was like months that this keeps happening. Then when I came to the decision to stop, there was something in me that switched. And the same thing, like it like clicked. And the same thing happened with carnivore, where I tried it for 30 days just to try it. And then it was such a net positive that it just switched in me. But what happened, I think, after that is super important. I think we're so used to immediate, like, boom, it's going to be like perfect and great so fast because the dopamine hit is kind of what we're going for, anyways, is like that quick gratification. But what actually happened when I let go of those things and that switch happened was the rewards, they like keep coming still. And it's been years since both of them. So it's like it's almost like over time, I keep getting rewarded for that quick change that I made. Whereas before I was trying to get the quick reward for something that I wasn't changing. And like, I don't know, I think that's important to call out because yeah, it's not like life gets more dull. If for anything, for me, life got way more interesting because in weird ways I didn't imagine or know or still didn't think would come about, did come about. It's
What
cool.
are, yeah, I love that. I love that you share the income aspect of it, which I think a lot of people don't realize how much money they're not getting because of that just preoccupation with the with food, and trying to recover from the food that they're eating. So, can you share a little bit about those benefits that keep coming in, including the income?
Yeah, I mean, so like there's a lot of things. So when your life is controlled by food, um, that means your friendships are controlled by it. That means your social engagement is controlled by it, a lot of different things. So something that I have discovered as a hack from carnivore is just the art of making steaks with people. And cooking with people, which is something I never did. I always avoided it because I never took the time to learn to cook. I don't really like to cook that much. And my mom had restaurants growing up, so I never like needed to too much. But then also I had an eating disorder. So like to me, that was just like risky business. Like I'm just gonna like minimize food intake was always my thing. Um, when I discovered carnivore, I realized like a weird benefit that came from it was I'm actually now doing what would be called, religiously breaking bread with people. I'm not religious, but there is something to that. Sitting down with people and cooking with them or eating with them creates some kind of bond. And I don't know what it is. I don't know how to describe it. I'm just speaking from personal experience. So as a result, my social life actually improved because now I can eat with other people and I'm not avoiding meals, but I'm also able to like invite people over to cook with me, and that's generating a community. And in this day and age, there is nothing more important than that. So like we struggle with community. If you don't struggle with food but you want to make more friends, cook steaks with people. Like that's just one of those weird benefits that came from it. Going into like the income side of things, yeah, like I don't know if people recognize how this is my opinion, but I think a lot of people are asleep when it comes to how the things we intake affect us. It's like very obvious with alcohol. Like if you drink alcohol, you're going to be hungover for like a day, sometimes 2 days, and there's a net negative impact in that. You're going to be sleepier. You might not want to go to the gym and might not go. Your gains, if you're trying to hit goals, are going to be affected. Anxiety, it's called hangxiety for a reason. So just like a lot of negatives that come with that as an aftermath of drinking. It's the same with ultra processed foods. It's like there's this fog that comes about. And so like I'm a sales director and a lot of what happens in our lane is like what you put in, you get out. And so when I actually started eating clean and having a better relationship to food and eating more, like I could think better. I could focus better, and therefore my results were better. I was making more deals more quickly. I was able to sell more quickly, which directly impacted my sales um, numbers. But I don't think it just applies to sales. I think it goes to like so many people with carnivore. They get kind of step out of a brain fog, in a sense. You need less sleep. You're like more alert. And so you're just gonna be more productive as a result of that. Or even if not productive, your energy is going to be more aligned. And when you're aligned, only good things come from that. So there's that. And I'll end it with this. When I was a sales when I was in sales, I don't really sell anymore. I more so manage now. But like when I was in sales and I stopped drinking and I was doing carnivore, my income increased by 7 times in 1 year.
Wow.
Like, yeah, like because suddenly you have a gain on the rest of society. That's what people don't get is like if everybody's kind of like going along with the beat of the drum and doing the thing, and you just decide to take your own path. And for me, I like wasn't hungover and I didn't have any brain fog and I needed less sleep and I had high energy and I felt good. Like I could basically do double the amount of work in the same amount of time, no extra effort, no extra time. Like, and that's what it compounds. So then you make more money. And I ended up going from a sales individual contributor person to now I manage all the people that are the salespeople to now I made 3% of every single sale that came to the company. So then my income compounded literally no extra time, no extra effort, but I was just able to think. So there's all these weird rewards that come from it. And then what comes from more income, right? You have more time to travel, you have more freedom, like all of those that we could go into that we don't need to, but all from just it really is from subtracting rather than adding things. It's like what did I subtract? And it was just a couple things and it made life a lot better for me.
Wow. I love that so
Mhm.
much. Yeah, I don't usually hear people talking about the financial impact as much. And that's why your videos were really exciting, because one of the few people talking about, listen, when you remove all substances and how they affect you and slow you down, it's not just about your health. It's not just about the food chatter. It's so much more than that. So that's
Yeah.
exciting. Yeah. What do
Yeah. It's
you
so much more.
yeah. What do you think about the sugar diet?
Oh gosh. So many people are asking me this. I haven't dived into it and seen so much of the details. I think that to each their own, if you want to try it, do it. I actually have people in my life that are in my family that are trying it and they're actually getting good results from it. But for me, this is going to be out there, but I'm going to say it. I do think that for people who are taking care of their mental state and like genuinely are actually really happy people and like fulfilled and take time to go outside and be with community and all that. I actually think that there are a lot of diets that can work for people. My dad's an excellent example. He's 81 in December. He looks like he's 55. He travels he went to Dubai twice last year. He just retired, but he's still now starting new projects. And all he's really ever eaten is ultra processed foods. He drinks 1 drink a night. He vapes and he's muscular and he looks great. You know what I mean? But he also doesn't dwell on things. He lets things go. He's happy. He has a strong community, really good family that he's connected to. So my point in saying that is like I think there's a lot of ways that people could be healthy and happy. I think for me, I think carnivore is probably the most direct, easy, convenient way. The sugar diet, I could see if somebody's like aligned, if it's helping them not be so focused on like measuring things and like the stress that comes from that. I could see how that could help them be more aligned and maybe they get results. I don't think that a total abundance of sugar all the time is probably great for insulin levels, honestly, or energy levels. I could, maybe it depends on where your heritage is from, like maybe that depends. I don't have the answers. I don't think I will be doing it. I just think that we need to have more seasonality for sugar. But then again, you know what I mean? Like, this is one of those things where I think we all have to stay open minded to it because science changes and evolves. Like, maybe there's something we could learn from it in terms of what it could help us understand about the body and the mind and all that. What do you think about it?
Yeah. I filmed a bunch of videos on that. It's so what happens when you eliminate the combo of high fat, high sugar? So let's say you're just doing, high sugar and no fat. and very, 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 very little protein to not spike the insulin. What ends up happening is the liver, you trigger the liver to increase the production of this peptide FGF21. And
Hmm.
FGF21, when it goes up, sure, it's going to speed up your metabolism. People are losing weight. It's like taking cocaine, right? And you're stimulated 24/7. Yeah, you're going to lose weight. You're going to feel amazing. And you can show up some of the studies like, yo, look, FGF21 is great. You want to boost it, and then you're going to lose weight. And when you lose weight, fatty liver reverses, insulin resistance reverses because you're losing weight. Yeah, but we know that, right? I know that if I have somebody lose weight and by just giving them nothing but cocaine, yeah, they will reverse the fatty liver, they will reverse the insulin resistance. But what am I doing to their brain? I am giving them a substance that consistently, every single time they run a study, consistently, sugar is more addictive, not just than cocaine and very high concentrations of cocaine. It's even more addictive than heroin. Every single time they run the experiment, every different research group, same result. You look at the brain scans of people, right, who are obese, they look not just like a person with alcoholism or cocaine or heroin substance use disorder, it's worse. The dopamine destruction, the D2 receptor destruction is actually worse. And so it's this whole craze with the sugar diet. It showed me so many people that I knew were carnivores, even like people with large and small followings, like across the board. I was touting the benefits of carnivore, trying to do the carnivore, talking about food addiction, how they had sugar addiction, whatever. Like in an instant, you remember when we're talking about you're eating the sugar and right away it's like the prefrontal, like you don't know what happened and you know what happened to the prefrontal cortex. It's called an amygdala hijack situation where you literally the amygdala, the stress part of the brain, kind of takes over and it disempowers the prefrontal cortex. I just saw that on a global scale, and I was just amazed at how quickly people get sucked into it. Even people with a lot of scientific knowledge, even people who have been in the fitness field for a very long period of time. Like these aren't people who just watched a video and got excited and did it, like people with a lot of knowledge base. But that's what addiction does. It literally hijacks your analytical reasoning abilities. And now, of course, even those people are like, oh, you know what? I notice I'm losing muscle. Like you think, and
Yeah.
everybody's stopping, and like now it's like dying. It's just, but like those few months or weeks, I don't know how long it's been. I was in awe, and also kind of like just reminding myself, like, wow, like people can be so easily manipulated. Not everybody, but a large chunk can be so easily manipulated, and that's what happens when you kind of give your reasoning abilities to some other entity. It's like the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. When you don't practice being a leader, when you don't practice constantly challenging what you're being told, this is how easily you are like a feather in the wind. Anybody can pull you right and left. And it's yeah, it's just wild stuff.
It is wild. It is wild. Yeah, I think that's true. And I think I literally just posted this thing. I don't get on Instagram too much because then I'll just want to keep scrolling. But I
Yeah.
did see this post the other day and I thought it was really powerful. It was something about like, if you don't, exactly like what you just said, if you don't sort of like man your own fort, then like someone else will. And like, if you don't create what your own belief system is,
Yes.
then someone else will create it for you and you'll follow theirs and like all of that. Right. And so I think, yeah, so much of what I find the value of carnivore has been, and partly why I kind of have been sucked into this world about food and all that, is that I am fascinated at how paradigm shifting it is. We literally have been told for years that meat makes us, causes cancer potentially or other negative impacts. We're supposed to have like what, 4 ounces a day or something like that. It's like so small. And that is what we were told. And animal fat is bad. And that, grains, we need a certain amount in a day. And that's while we're still trying to understand what's going on with carnivore, the results that people keep getting from carnivore put those recommendations into question big time, which means like there's a lot to question there. Like, why, okay, even if nothing is nefarious, like, why are we not looking at carnivore a little bit more intentionally? It's like, why are we pushing so hard against it? And like, everybody's so defensive of like, well, there's no studies, there's no studies, there's no studies. It's like, well, let's do the studies then so that we can understand it. But no one wants to do the studies, and it's like, well, why? That's interesting to me. That's the
Right.
part where I'm like, well, so it kind of opens this door of, like you said, to like question things, because like if there's nothing to hide, then expose everything, do the studies,
Yeah.
then do the studies. But if otherwise, then it allows us to challenge our paradigms in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the vast majority of nutritional studies are funded by the food industry, and the food industry has this large profit margin because it's figured out that it can use a drug that people are unaware how powerful it is without any regulation. It's like it's like the original heroin dealer or the cocaine dealer before there were laws put in place to regulate their dealings. This is the
Yeah.
wild, wild west right now. This is what they're doing. And they know it because they know what happens in the brain. I mean, they actually put their test subjects in PET scans and MRI machines, and like they check what recipe actually, what version of the recipe increases dopamine release the most. Not just the most, it's like that twilight zone, not too high, but not too low, just the right amount to maximize the addictive potential. So they know about addiction, right? But it's just that they're not being regulated because our lawmakers aren't regulating them, right? And we need more lawmakers to run on that and the people. But it comes with us, really. It starts with us. The thing is, if we're not buying the drug foods, they're not going to make it, right? They're going to cater to our taste buds. They're going to start making more real whole foods that's fresh and available everywhere. But we keep buying it and we keep buying it because we don't realize just how powerful a drug, how much of a hold it has, especially initially, like as you're trying to eliminate it. It can feel insurmountable. Eventually, it becomes easy, it becomes automatic. Um, but yeah, who's going to fund those studies? you know?
Well, you literally nailed it on the head. I just was talking about this the other day about just like it's very simple supply and demand. It really is. And it's also it doesn't need to be this whole conspiratorial thing. Like again, I'm a sales director. So like I love sales, I love marketing, I understand it, I understand advertising. I've built an advertising agency before. I have been on every single side of the ad, selling the ad, buying the ad. Like I have a YouTube channel, you know what I mean? Like it's run off of advertising. Like I'm with it, I get it, I support it, I love capitalism. It can be that simple as someone like Lauren who wants to make some money and thinks they have a good idea. They just create this cookie that is like a cookie, it tastes good, and they want to make something that people like. And so you create something that people like, and the things that people like tend to be, salt and sugar and fat and that kind of stuff. And so you put that in your food so that people will want to keep eating it. And the way that I interviewed this food scientist guy, and like, we were talking about kind of the interesting part about the difference between, like, he doesn't feel like it's bad to be making this foods because it says on the food label, per serving, there's X amount of calories and carbs and whatever. So per serving, it has whatever the amount is, which is within the appropriate range of what would make sense for a person to consume. The problem is that the food scientist's job is to literally make it addicting. How do they do that? They add a certain amount of sweet, a certain crunch, a texture, combinations of different flavors, all these various tricks that they use to more or less keep the brain wanting to eat it. So what that means is you have an average person out there who's just normal, who wants to sell a product. They're going to create a product that's desirable, that people keep wanting to buy. And I think it comes down to the fact that we as people haven't quite understood, like you said, the negative impact that can come with eating those things. Like it does slow you down in your mind, or it maybe could be a contributing factor to cancer or to, the like dementia or other things that we're not tying in. We're thinking it's other things. But if we just come to realize that, like, then yeah, like we just stop buying it and then the supply will get less and we'll start being able to buy things that we actually know are good for us. We have the power completely, like totally. It's not in anybody else's hands.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, I love that you said that. Exactly. Similar to like when people talk about mainstream medicine and how it is. And it's
Yeah.
like, I've worked with enough clients that I know that people want the pill. They want the surgery. They want it, even though you tell them it's not going to fix the root cause. It's actually probably going to mask it. And then you're going to have even worse symptoms in the future. But they just cannot um, swallow the discomfort. For some people, it's way more than for others. Older you get, more complex health issues, right? They cannot swallow the discomfort that they have to go through initially as they're making the changes. And yeah, so this is why, like, I'm trying as much as possible to try and see, okay, how can we scale this in a way whereby, because I don't have the patience all the time, and I know I won't have the patience forever to do like one-on-ones and wait until it clicks for that person, or wait until their life completely falls apart, because it might not fall apart tomorrow. It might take 5 more years before they're like, okay, now I really have to face this thing and really have to deal with it. Um, and if I'm working with a client, I can't be waiting all this time until it has to come from within, right? They have to want it, they
Mm.
have to make the change. A lot of the things that you have to do, especially if you come from a food addicted background, binge eating, cravings, things like that, because this is really what I talk so much about. So I tend to attract that kind of person that has more, addictive type behaviors. A lot of things that you have to do to overcome that are not going to be for the faint of heart. And sometimes the only thing that can allow a person to be ready to do that is that the pain where they're at has to be so much greater than the discomfort or the pain that they have to willingly inflict upon themselves initially until they adapt to it to be able to overcome. And yeah, that can take time for some people.
Oh yeah. I actually was just talking about this the other day with like I call it the middle stage where like I think a lot of people I used to be stuck in the middle stage where it's like really not that bad and but it's also not that good. So you're not really going to make a change because you're just kind of in the middle. And like your life could be a 10 out of 10, which would be like, wow, but your life could also be like a 1 out of 10. But most people are like a six, kind of, or like a seven. And that's where I was, is like, I'm like a 6, 7. So, like, I'm pretty cool. Like, things are all right. Nothing's crazy. And it did take it starting to go from a 6, 7 down to like a 5, 4, 3, 2 for me to actually make a change.
Mm,
Um, and it's just funny because I think so many of us will stay in the middle stage and that's okay, right? Like for some people, that's just the life that they choose to have. But I think it's just an unawareness, a
mm,
lack of awareness that it could be so much better and a lot easier too. Um, it's just, I mean, I wasn't aware that I was in the middle stage when I was in the middle stage, you
right,
know?
right. Yeah, you know that quote, the masses lead lives of quiet desperation. I think it's,
Yeah.
I forget who said that, but it is so true. The vast majority of the people, that's where most people live their lives. They're not really chasing their full potential because it can be very uncomfortable to take that route. Just like what they don't realize, they're paying with that discomfort anyway by living that zombie like state. It's still uncomfortable, right? Deep down, you
Mhm.
know you're not living up to your full potential. And that starts to eat away at you, right? And the more you allow limiting beliefs, the more easily you can allow more limiting beliefs. It's like whatever you rehearse becomes stronger and more powerful over time. And so you're either rehearsing breaking limiting beliefs and getting better, or you're rehearsing putting more and more limiting beliefs, and the more limits you put on yourself, the easier you limit yourself even more and more and more. And those neural tracks in the brain start becoming more and more well rehearsed and more paved. And you start falling apart as well. It's like there's just two cycles in life. You're either getting better or you're getting worse. There's no status quo. Because if you're not
Yeah.
constantly getting better, you're aging, like, you're deteriorating, you're falling apart
Mhm.
just by staying there. So you're actually getting worse over time. So yeah, and that's why it's so much better to learn how to motivate yourself by learning how to increase your pull forces as opposed to wait to be dragged around by your push forces, because those are the only two motivational systems, right? We're either running away from pain, using the push forces to push us into action, or we're motivated by being inspired and running towards pleasure and utilizing our pull forces. And most of us, unfortunately, only move and take action when we're just being pushed by the pain and like, okay, fine, the pain is getting too much. I'll make the change. Um, but then you'll always be limited. You'll always be like a sitting duck waiting until bad things happen, and you only move until you heal the symptoms of that. But that keeps your potential untapped, because if you learn how to constantly increase your pull forces, there is no limit to that. You get to decide.
Yeah. And um, I think that in a way that's going to be how a lot of the world will continue to go on, right? Like just a lot of people out there who are like very comfortable and they're cool with that. And that's like sick, like power to you, honestly. Like that, if that's how you want to be and like you're happy and like, who am I to say, honestly? Like everybody has their own way of living that they want to live. And that's awesome. I think it's more for people who feel a kind of undercurrent of being unfulfilled. Like there is an undercurrent there of something's missing or like dull or like lack of depth is probably more who I tend to attract to me, because I really don't care like what anybody's lifestyle is. I really don't. It's like if you're happy, like that's awesome. It's just like for me, I've always felt like since I was younger, I always had this feeling of like there's more. And I've come to like learn also through years of just professional and experience and different kind of heads, like different windows I've poked my head through and doors and like things I've looked past and pulled the curtain past. I'm like, it's kind of all smoke and mirrors at the end of the day. Like everything is. So like you really can create the life you want. You really can. But it's for people who feel that way. They're like, I'm not quite there yet. It's like that's who I think you and I probably attract, is like people like us who want more
Yeah.
and feel this pull and we don't know why. And the answer is there is more. Like
Yeah.
you just have to want it.
Yeah. 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 I think the why is just that deep down, our subconscious mind is so much more intelligent than our conscious mind. It's picking up data all the time, it's picking up tons of data points that I'm not consciously aware of right now because I'm focused on this interview. But even
Mhm.
when you're in the womb, you're picking up data points. And so the subconscious mind has so much more intelligence stored in it. And it knows deep down that you have so much more to give. Your potential is infinitely greater than what you're doing right now. And as long as you know that you're not living up to your potential, no matter how successful you are right now, I think you will always have that feeling like something's missing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's people that are meant to do really wonderful, amazing things. You know what I mean? Like everybody's meant to do really wonderful, amazing things, but I think you're pulled. Like you're pulled in a direction. It's people I think who ignore that pull that end up suffering. They end up drinking. They end up being in really dark relationships. You know what I'm saying? It's like everybody has a pull in a certain direction. It's this way, it's that way. Like where am I going? You're trying, everybody has that in some direction. And if you don't go with it, that energy has to go somewhere. And a lot of times it's managed, I think, through substances, sugar, processed foods, alcohol, weed, none of those things are inherently bad. It's just that when they're used as a replacement for then going toward what the potential could be, where you're being pulled, that's when I think you see obesity and, you know, really dark, not happy relationships and health issues. Energy has to go somewhere.
That addiction is untapped potential. That I truly believe that to the core. That's exactly what you just described. I love it so much because
Mhm.
as long as you're feeling that, is your subconscious mind is constantly now sending you feelings of I'm not motivated, I'm not excited, those negative emotions, because that's the only way your subconscious brain can send you the wealth of data without having you sit there for hundreds of years explaining all the data points that it's collected over your lifetime. It has no
Yeah.
time to give you that information. So the way that your subconscious brain communicates with you, the only way it can in a fast enough manner is via emotion. Positive emotion, it means yes, you're on the right track, you made the right decision, keep going. And negative emotion means you're just so off, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, you're staying in a relationship you know you shouldn't be staying in, you're lowering your standards, you're not shooting for a better career even though you know you can, you're not doing those things you should be doing. And so you think that by being realistic and being like, oh, like just kind of ignoring that voice, you think you'll be fine. You won't. It's gonna eat you up alive, and that's when you get into you can't stop eating sugar. You can't moderate a substance. Like you said, the energy has to go somewhere, and it starts to eat you up. You start self sabotaging and literally destroying
Mhm.
yourself.
Yeah.
So, oh,
Totally.
I love this so much. We got so deep, and but I think
I
this
understand.
what?
I was say I understand what you're saying. I am tracking completely. Do you listen to Abraham Hicks by chance?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm all into that stuff. But I love the sciencey stuff too. Like for me,
Yeah.
for things
You
to
both.
click, yeah, like Dr. Joe Dispenza, and then I try to take this stuff even if they're not delivering it in a scientific manner, and I try to look for the science because my brain only really clicks things click for my brain when I see hard data and evidence, and it just makes it more real in my brain and I can use it better. But yeah, I definitely am into all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Me too.
I know,
Me too.
I know, I love it. Okay. Um, I'm so glad that we both found carnivore. I'm so glad that you had that transformation and that you share
Mhm.
all of your experiences. Um, and you know what I also love? I also love that sometimes, like, if you have a cookie, like, you'll tell everybody, like, yeah, I had a cookie and it's okay. And like the next day you go back. I love that, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, I mean, there's the thing is with that is like people, again, we're all really intelligent. Like you said, the subconscious is like very intelligent. People can call out and sense bullshit immediately. And I'm sorry, but there are so many people online who want to like pretend like they do this thing perfectly. And it's just not that way. Like that's just not true. And so I just never want to be inauthentic, Um, because one, I'm like, that always comes around and bites you in the ass anyways. Always. But two, it's just like it's not fair to people, right? Like if people are sitting there and it's like they go out to dinner one night with their friends and then they have like a bite of a cake, that like and that now they're going to feel like this like terrible person because they did that. Meanwhile, so many people who are online talking about carnivore coaching it do similar stuff. Now, am I going to say I sit there and I eat cake every day? Like, absolutely not. I eat 99.9% carnivore. And then sometimes, if it's like I'm going out on a special occasion, I'll have a piece of cake or I'll have a bite of cake. And that's, but that's reality. That's reality for me. Now, there's some people that are like Bella, who literally has not had anything but meat in 6 years. Um, it's just like I think it's just being honest with people because like it's a responsibility also when you're public facing, and you're talking about things. It's like pe- people there's a lot of people that are suffering with chronic health issues or eating disorders and whatever, and they like deserve the truth, to know like, oh, I don't need to beat myself up and kill myself if I'm like screw up this one day, just like get back on, you know, and also know oneself. Like, can you even do that? Like for me, it's like I don't like I can have a piece, like a bite of cake and not run away with it like I used to be able to. But 5 years ago, absolutely not. I'd have the whole cake if I ate that, you know? So it's like also knowing oneself and being real about it, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think, yeah, and I love that you shared that because sometimes when we talk so much about sugar addiction, I'm going to be interviewing Bitten Johnson. She's a pioneer and very famous in like the sugar addiction world. She has a whole certification program. Anyway, if people follow sugar addiction world, they know about her. So, and sometimes when I go too deep into that and listen to a lot of those lectures, you're kind of priming your brain to act in that way when when you surround yourself with just how grave food addiction can be, and it's kind of important also to not let our guard down because it can be a very powerful drug. But at the same time, if you go too deep down that rabbit hole, you can start to prime your brain to act in the way that you are told you're supposed to act. It's like once you take that first bite, you can't stop. And so it's like yes and no. Yes, it's a lot harder to stop, but also you can override that and also you can stop midway. Even if it feels like an insurmountable task, you can still do it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And so it's like all those things, all those habits and tools that you develop over time, that's what keeps you sane and keeps you on track, as opposed to sometimes like the black and white thinking, which I know like when we have this drive, this like kind of entrepreneurial or, you know, competitive mindset, this all or nothing, it's great for business and career and it's great for accomplishment. Um, but with the food, it can sink you because it's like, oh, I had a
Yeah.
bite. I guess that's it. Fell off
Yeah.
the wagon. Might as well order all the foods right now because
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
have it
Yeah.
ever, you know? Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, no doubt. It's definitely got to like find that balance in the middle. I tend to like to create pillars in my life that I can then like kind of dance around. So like I used to cut corners quite a bit with food where it's like if I like one of the pillars that I created that helps me not be so black and white and have a little bit of flex in there if I want to eat an apple or something, which again, it's rare, but I run a lot. Like I'll run like trails and if I'm dying like 14 miles in, I need to like add some of that in there back, then I'm going to. And one of the pillars for me is like what I used to do as a habit, as a relationship to food issue was, like I said, I'd nibble on little sugar things just to get a little bit of a sugar bite. Like, and now a pillar to me is like, don't nibble. Like you eat the whole thing or you don't eat it at all. And
Mm,
you know what I mean? Like that's something that helped me quite a bit is like, it doesn't mean you can't ever have it, but if you're going to do it and eat the whole thing. That way you don't think you're just having minimal calories and then you're just going to keep nibbling and then it turns into a binge. Like for
yeah.
some reason, that's how it affected me.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, it's like you have to figure out what works for you. There's a great interview that just came out, Rich Roll interviewing, I think his name is Ethan Suplee or something like
Mhm.
that. He's like a famous actor. And they talk especially about that, like the food addiction um and this guy was like over 500 pounds and now he's like shredded and all the things that he went through um and try to do the carnivore thing, but then went back to like more of it's not so much about this black and white thinking, like can't touch rice, you know, and if I do, then
Yeah.
that opens up the whole addictive brain or the carby brain, and you know, like a lot of nuance in that interview. And I thought that that was a very, very interesting, interesting interview. I didn't agree with all the stuff with the food stuff all the time, but it doesn't matter. It's like what works for him. That's more important, you know?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. It's always, it's like know oneself. That's it. Just like
Yes.
know self, try
Yeah.
figure yourself out.
Yeah.
And for me, the best way to do that was to start with a massive elimination diet, carnivore,
Yeah.
and then go from there. And that's the same with substances. I basically eliminated all the substances in my life because then I got to baseline. Like I know what I feel like without this substance and this thing pulling on my energy. Like now I'm just like, oh, okay, this is me. If I add this back in, how does that land? that was my process,
Yeah.
and it worked well.
Perfect. Yeah, I love the running too, by the way, because I love to run, and I mean, I talk so much
Yeah,
about that, like in raising baseline dopamine. It's so powerful when you combine that with this lifestyle. So
yeah,
love it.
it
Thank
is.
you so much, Lauren. Again, I know you have to run. I kind of stole you away from your job today.
You're
Um,
fine.
where can people find you, connect with you, and follow along your journey?
Yeah, no, this is great. We could talk probably for like 7 hours. I feel like we have a lot in common. Um, People can find me on just my YouTube channel or Instagram. My YouTube channel is just my name. It's long. It's Lauren Knight Hughes, Knight with a K. And I also just have an Instagram where I connect a little bit more individually, like one-on-one in messages and stuff on my Instagram channel, which is also just my name. So those two would probably be the easiest ways.
Fantastic. I'll make sure that I link those in the description box below. I want to thank you again for taking time out of your busy day to share your story with us. Thank you, everybody, for sticking with us till the end. If you enjoyed this kind of content, make sure you give this YouTube video a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that little notification bell icon so YouTube alerts you every time I post a new video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.